Hey friends! So I've got Thanksgiving cooking recipes, and this all started the Friday before Thanksgiving. So we were gonna go over to a friend's house and they were gonna grill some hamburgers. So I wanted to make homemade Japanese milk bread buns to use for hamburger buns, and also bring them some chocolate chip cookies. So I'll also link the recipes down below for you. This is my go-to Japanese milk bread recipe. It's super easy, and I have been tripling it, so it's easier to do the math tripling it. Not that it's impossible or anything, but it's just easier if I use grams instead of measuring cups. So that's what I'm doing. I've just taken the recipe, tripled it, and it gives you the measurements in grams and cups in the recipe. So you can do either one, but using a food scale is more accurate. So I try to use a food scale whenever possible, whenever I'm doing things like bread that are a little bit more finicky. So just adding in my flour and my sugar. And then I'm also weighing out my yeast, and I'm just tearing the scale out, zeroing it out, tearing the scale, but zeroing it out, I guess is the right way to say it, and just throwing some yeast in there. And then I'm adding some salt to it. And I added a little bit too much salt, so I'm trying to scoop it out, but it was nearly impossible to scoop it out without scooping other things out too. So I tried to grab a clump because I figured that would weigh more. And I'm just giving it a stir. That way whenever I go to put this mixture in it, it's all stirred and won't clump together. So this is called tangzong. This is the secret in Japanese milk bread, and it is just some milk and flour heated over the stove, and you just whisk it so there's no clumps, and you let it cook till it's a thick paste. And here I'm just melting some butter. This is a very rich dough. It's very soft and fluffy, but it's enriched with milk, butter, and eggs. So in a bit we'll get to cooking for actually Thanksgiving Day, but I thought I'd include these clips because they were part of Thanksgiving week too, and I wanted to get this video out to y'all sooner, but I was definitely trying to spend more time with family. And here I'm just adding some milk to the melted butter. It calls for you to warm up the milk and melt the butter, but let it cool. So I just add my milk straight into the hot butter and let the temperatures even themselves out that way. But you'll see that I did let it sit too long in the cold milk, and the butter started to solidify in little clumps. So I'm just adding the eggs, and I did get an eggshell in this, but it was a pretty big eggshell, so I was able to fish it out whenever I poured it in. Okay, and this is the tangzong. It's supposed to be smooth but thick like this, and you put that into the flour mixture. Of course you need to let it cool first so that it doesn't make your yeast get hot and kill your yeast. So let me know down below what your Thanksgiving plans were. We just spent time with my in-laws, and I'm pouring this through a strainer to try to get that eggshell out. But anyway, so typically we have like a couple Thanksgivings to go to. This time it was just one, and everything was so good. Everything that everybody cooked was just delicious, and we had a great time spending time with family and stuff, so we had a real good time. Okay, and I've just got my dough hook. You can use the paddle attachment or knead this by hand, but it would just take a lot longer since it's so much dough at a time. But I just go ahead in with my dough hook, and then I'm spraying down my gloves. You don't have to use gloves, but I just like it better because I'm having to wear band-aids on my fingers. And actually, if you've seen any of my previous videos, you know about this, but as I'm recording this, as I'm voicing this over, I'm not wearing any band-aids, so all of my warts are finally gone. I've been going to the dermatologist for a really long time, and I have autoimmune issues, so it's harder for me to fight things off, but they are gone, so it's a whole lot easier now to cook and bake and stuff. But look how beautiful and smooth that dough is. I'm just oiling the bowl so I can let it rest in there, and I really just let bread rise now until it doubles in size or gets even bigger than that. This is gonna go for 2 rises, because like every time I make it, it's different, so I don't know. And I was running out of brown sugar to make the chocolate chip cookies I wanted to bring, so I wanted to make some brown sugar real quick. And you'll see my container of brown sugar that I had before, and it was really dark. I put too much molasses in it the first time, so this time I'm downsizing the molasses I'm using just so it's not as strong. And you can do this with a mixer, but I found it's actually faster to get in there and do it with your hands because you can pinch the clumps of molasses together. So I'm just like massaging the molasses into the sugar, and this is shelf stable, just like regular brown sugar that you'd buy in the store. And it should clump together like that. It's kind of fun to play with. It's kind of like playing with moon sand. And then I'm just putting it in my brown sugar container. Okay, and now for the cookies. This is my favorite chocolate chip cookie recipe I've found so far. It calls for 2 sticks of butter that you melt, which I like that because I don't want to have to worry about softening the butter. So to that, you're going to add some sugar, and brown sugar. And the goal is to get the sugar to dissolve a little bit into the melted butter. Okay, and then I'm just adding the eggs, and this gives it a really nice chewy texture. And yeah, I got another shell in it. And then you'll see the texture change as I whisk it in. It gets a lot thicker. So in a little bit, I'm going to show you that we finally got our Christmas tree set up, and we got a new tree, so I'm excited to show you that. All those donations and all that decluttering I did paid off. We got that room mostly cleared out now, and we're still working on it. I'm just adding some vanilla and baking powder, baking soda, and then I'll be adding my flour in. So stick around to see the Christmas tree at the end and some other festive touches I add around the house. So the flour I'm going to whisk in, and of course you could, the directions actually say to stir the flour and like the dry ingredients together first, but I don't really ever do that unless I feel that it's really important. So I just didn't, but it'll start getting too thick for the whisk. So I got a rubber spatula out and I'm just mixing it in, and I get most of the flour mixed in, and then I add the chocolate chips while there's still a little bit of flour, just so that I don't over mix the dough. And these are my chocolate chips from Azure Standard. They're the top 9 allergen-free chocolate chips. I really like them. So I'm just adding 2 cups of those, I think. I don't remember if it was a half cup or not. And so who knows, but I just add chocolate chips until it looks right. So anyway, I'm just mixing that together, and then this dough needs to chill for about an hour. And it can chill for longer, but I'm just going to cover it with some saran wrap so it doesn't develop a weird skin, and then we're going to get to baking it. Okay, so now that it's chilled, I'm just scooping these out, and I put gloves on just in case I would need to like roll them out into balls further and got dough on my hands. So that's why I'm wearing gloves. And you can see I'm finally out of my pajamas. So I did that early in the morning, all the other baking, just getting it ready. And then while things were rising and refrigerating, I took a shower and got dressed for the day. So I also portioned out these because I didn't need to bake all of the dough. It makes a lot of cookies. And then we could just bake them as needed throughout the week. And I've been baking on my Pamper Chef stone. I think it's called like a bar pan or something. I got it from a thrift store. I love it. It gives the cookies a nice caramelized flavor. And once they've cooled, I'm just gonna put them in packages because we had 2 families we needed to give these to, or wanted to give these to. So I am putting them in 2 different containers. And then I'm about to bake my second batch of cookies. Okay, and I'm just taking some melted butter and just pouring it in my loaf pan. Like I said, I tripled the recipe, so I'm using it for different things. I'll be making rolls to bring. Hot dog buns. I'm not hot dog buns. Oh my gosh. Hamburger buns to bring. And then I'm also going to make a loaf out of a third of the dough. So I'm just brushing melted butter, and I do it on the rim too because bread often rises really high and I don't want it to stick to the rim. So I'm gonna shape up the dough to get it ready for its second rise and shape it in the pans and the buns. So that little silicone scraper, I love it. I got it from Hobby Lobby, and it is the best. So I'm just flattening it out and rolling it and tucking it in a nice neat little loaf, trying to make sure the seams are as closed as possible. And then I've got it just like that, and I'm gonna put this fabric like shower cap type thing over it. And one of my friends actually made that for me. So I went to one of her markets, and well, she didn't make it exclusively for me. I bought it from one of her markets, but she makes really cool things like that. So here I am just sectioning out the dough. Sometimes I weigh the dough if I want them to be very even, but I decided not to do that. I decided to just split it into however many pieces I thought would be a good size. And then these turn out to be very big. These rise a lot, so I'm just rolling them in my hand to make them super round. And you'll see in a little bit, before I bake them, I'll brush them with a mix of a whole egg, and you add a little bit of milk to it, and then you brush that on them, and it makes them nice and brown and shiny. And then this was my first time adding sesame seeds to the top. I thought it'd be fun, since they were going to be used for hamburger buns, to do that. I bought sesame seeds a little while back, and this was the first day I got to use them. And I'm just wiping up the oil that was on the counter from the loaves, and these are ready to go in the oven. So these bake at 350, I believe, for like 20 minutes, and then you cover them with foil, and then they bake for another 10 to 20 minutes. The rolls, of course, don't take as long to bake as a huge loaf of bread, so. And here I am just sprinkling the sesame seeds on. Oh, and they look so pretty, but they look even better once they come out of the oven. I was worried the sesame seeds would burn, but they didn't. See, they're so golden brown and shiny. And then, of course, you use a bread knife to just slice them in half to use them for buns. And the loaf split, I'm not sure why. So it's Thanksgiving morning now, and I'm just putting my ham in the crock pot. So this is how I've cooked ham for probably at least 3 years now. I just buy a Smithfield ham. It doesn't have to be Smithfield brand, but just not the sugar-coated ham and not the spiral cut. It's just a plain salty ham. I don't know how else to describe it. This one was pretty fatty. I decided to flip it because I wanted the fat on the bottom at first, hoping that would render off a little bit. And you cook it on low and slow. Also, I made another triple batch of milk bread for Thanksgiving, and the rolls in the foil pan is what I'll be taking to Thanksgiving. And the bigger buns I made, I put those in my freezer. So it's the same exact recipe as I made Friday night. Okay, so now I'm working on getting all the apples peeled, cored, and cut. And I had so many Granny Smith apples, I didn't even use them all. My dad gave me some, and I already had some before that, so I'm using as many as I can, and we're gonna make an apple cobbler. And I'm also trying to save the cores and peels, and I threw them in a gallon freezer bag to store in the freezer for whenever I'm ready to make some apple jelly. And I have a random bag of cranberries in the freezer that I've had for a few years now, and I don't know what to do with them because it's just one bag. So I had the idea to combine them with the apple scraps and make a crayon apple jelly. So let me know if you've ever made something like that before, and if you have any tips. But I'd really like to get back into canning because it's been a long time since I've canned anything. And if you see me munching on some of the pieces still had the skin on them, so I just decided to eat a couple of those pieces. This little contraption is really fun if you're looking for a Christmas gift or birthday gift, anniversary gift, I don't know, for anybody. This I think it's called a Johnny Appleseed. It's perfect. It comes in different colors, and my husband got it for me for my last birthday. No, not my last, the year before last. And I love it. They're not that expensive, and I'd say they're pretty affordable for what they do. And sometimes they get kind of gross after all the apple juice going everywhere and stuff. So I just put mine straight under the faucet and rinse it off, and then wipe it down so that I don't cause any rust or anything. But they are great. I don't have the kind with the clamp. I have the kind with the suction cup, and it sticks great to my counters. There's like a lever that you push down, and it sticks very well. And my counters are textured, so. Okay, and here are all the apple scraps, and I'm still trying to get rid of my lime juice, so I used that. It works fine with apples. And then I'm adding a little bit of flour just so it thickens it. And then some sugar, and then in a little bit you'll see me add some cinnamon and some nutmeg. My husband's not a big cinnamon fan, and he likes a little bit, but he said I added too much cinnamon, which maybe I did, because now I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, that is a lot of cinnamon, but it's a lot of apples. So oh, and I didn't finish what I was saying about the ham. So if you decide to cook a ham in your slow cooker, add a little bit of water, not much at all, just so that the bottom of the crock pot doesn't get dry. And then you're going to you're going to keep it on low. You're going to think, oh wow, this isn't doing much. This ham's going to take forever to warm up. But don't. Keep it on low, because every time I've done it on high, it is not as tender. So I keep it on low, and this is the reason why I started at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I started at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I cooked for a couple hours, got things started, and while the bread was rising and such, I went back to bed for a couple hours. So we were eating at 2 o'clock. I don't think I said that. So I had time, but of course, when you're waiting on slower things like bread to rise and all that kind of stuff, it helps to start a little bit early. So I just sprayed a foil pan and tried to even out the apples as much as I could. And then I've got this, it's white cake mix. You could use box cake mix. This is a homemade mix version of it, and I can link that recipe too. But I'm just adding some of it and then spreading it out. And then you're gonna add some melted butter or pats of butter to the top of this. This was a half a stick or 1 stick of butter melted. I really didn't want to add 2 sticks of butter because I thought that was excessive, but this is a very big pan of dessert. So anyway, it wasn't as goopy as I wanted it to be, so I did have to add another stick of butter to the top. So just keep that in mind. Even with it covered, I thought it would steam and retain moisture, but it wasn't enough. But you could also add, cook the apples over the stove a little bit to get the juices out, and that way it is definitely more moist before you even put it in the oven. And here I'm just slicing up some yellow potatoes. And I probably had about 10 potatoes, like medium size. And there is no recipe for this, but it is scalloped potatoes or potatoes au gratin, you know, whatever you want to call it, cheesy potatoes. So there's no recipe for it, but it's very forgiving. So you just slice the potatoes, and then you make a roux with some butter and flour, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so here is our butter and flour. Usually it's about equal parts of your thickener to your fat. So the flour is the thickener and the fat's obviously the butter. And then you just whisk it, and then you're gonna let it cook for about a minute to just get the flour taste out. So then you're gonna add your liquid, which in my case it was milk, and I decided to add some chicken broth to this, which you might think, oh, that's kind of weird because it's not creamy. No, it works perfectly. You can add about half of each like creamy liquid to your broth. You could also do water if you season to compensate for it. Compensate for the loss of flavor for not using broth. But then I just add salt and pepper to this, and I'm also going to stir it as it thickens up, just make sure there's no clumps. And I made this very salty, but that's because there's a lot of potatoes in the dish and I wasn't seasoning the potatoes directly. So this is the only salt in the whole dish. And then that's the pepper going in, and then I add a good bit of onion powder in a small amount of garlic powder. Of course, you could use a fresh, and you could also slice up some onions to layer in with the potatoes. And then I used my Ninja blender / food processor to grate some cheese. I used extra sharp cheddar. That's my number one tip because it'll go a lot further. It's such a stronger flavor, so you don't have to use as much cheese. So I used the wrong side of the grating disc at first, and so it cut it into like little rectangles. So once I figured out that I had that wrong, I just did the rest shredded, but it's fine because this part it's gonna melt. And even you'll see in a minute the cheese that I top the casserole with, it's gonna melt just fine too, so it doesn't matter. They were thin slices, so I'm just taste testing it for salt and other seasonings just in case I wanted to add any more, and it was perfect. And I wanted it thick but not too thick since it was going to bake, and potatoes don't have a ton of moisture. And I sprayed this pan, that's why I can't get it to, the oil is making it slide around. I can't get it to go in all the corners, so here I am just putting the sauce at the bottom so the potatoes don't stick and burn and get weird. So I'm just layering in some of the potatoes, and once I have a good layer of them, I'm gonna add more sauce. So Thanksgiving was, it worked out pretty good because we didn't want to be stuck with a ton of leftovers. Me and the rest of our family did not. So, so nobody had a ton of leftovers left over, which was good. And, but we still had plenty to eat. If you haven't ever made potatoes au gratin or scalloped potatoes before, just know that you're going to want to cook it covered and give yourself a good 2 hours, especially if you make it as thick as I did, the layer of potatoes, because it takes a really, really long time to cook, and covering it will help lock in moisture and sort of steam cook it. And you can see that you can cover it with liquid, but you don't have to. I mean, you can cover it with your sauce, but you don't have to have enough to have the potatoes swimming in it or anything. So I'm just topping it with the rest of the extra sharp cheddar. And covering it, and I'm pretty sure I baked this at like 450 for an hour and a half. And those are the hamburger buns I made for the freezer. And then here's the ham. The ham was super tender. This is the potatoes au gratin. You can see how extra cheesy it got. And then these are the rolls I brought. They were super soft and fluffy. And this is the cobbler. And the cobbler, I think I baked at 400 for about maybe an hour, but I covered it most of the time and then took the cover off to make it brown and crispy on top. So this is last night. William and I decided to put up our tree. So this tree was $19.50 at Walmart. I think it's because the box was a little bit, not busted, but just like wrinkled or crimped at the end. And I have a tree, but it is huge. It's 7.5 feet tall. It's a cashmere tree. It's beautiful. I wanted it for a really long time, and I used it for a few years. But after the first year of using it, over half the lights went out, and like each year more lights go out. And it was expensive. And although I love the tree and I had to add my own lights to it, it's just so big and bulky, and we don't have space to store it because we keep it in a closet, and it's just so difficult to get in and out of that closet. So I decided I'm going to part ways with that tree, and maybe in the future, like years down the road, we'll get another one that big. But this is a 6.5 foot tree. It was half price at Walmart, and the colors change. You can change the lights to do whatever you want them to do, to slow blink, to only be color, to only be white lights. I think I'm a white lights kind of person. I just think they're so warm and cozy, but there is something fun about twinkling lights. So right now I have it on a slow blink between, it's like a slow fade in between the white lights and the colored lights. And this is in 3 parts. So the box for this tree was a whole lot smaller. It's probably 3 times as small as my other tree. So I just decided to get this done. And then the connectors were super easy. I zoomed in so you could see this because I've never seen connectors like this on a tree before. It's probably because I've never had one with this many lights on it, but I'm just trying to fluff the branches, and it is a little bit more sparse than the other one, but it's full enough for me. It doesn't look like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree or anything. So I'm just playing around with the functions. There's like 8 different functions, and this clip is sped up, so the slow fade is, I think, twice as fast you're seeing it as it actually is in real life. And this tree skirt I got at Goodwill at the end of last year, if you saw that Christmas thrift haul video, and it's one of my most popular videos, so, and definitely my most popular Christmas video, so you can go check that out. But I'm just putting this on, and this tree skirt looked huge with this Christmas tree, but I thought it would be nice because there's more space for presents under it now. And I only used about 1/5 of the ornaments I had, and then I put my wood bead garland on. And then here's our tree topper. William put that on for me. And here's the stockings that William hung up. We actually have a third one, but William's like, there's only 2 of us, like, let's just hang up 2, and there wasn't room for the third one up there. Last year we put him on our like corner that's bricked before, and there's more room for stockings over there. And over here I just decided to put some garland and these black metal bells, and I thought it was really pretty. I just kind of like wove them together. I thought the flameless candles would be really pretty sitting over here too. And I got this rug from Rose's. It was only like $5.99. I decided to just layer it with the rug I already had since it's a good bit smaller, but I'm really into the gingerbread stuff this year, and I thought it was adorable. I'll see y'all next time. Bye!